Father, we thank you for this time together, and we pray that you'll bless this group and bless these people that come and listen to this. Pray that you'll watch over our group in particular, and bless Pam and Rodney and their illness, that they might recover to 100% again, heal their bodies and make them well once again. Pray for all people in our families and our friends, that you might bless each and every one of us, and that we might take these lessons and incorporate them into our lives and share them with others. We thank you for the opportunity to serve you. We love you, and we give you the praise in your Son's name, Jesus of Nazareth, Michael. Amen. Amen. Hello, everyone. This is the Fifth Epical Revelation Fellowship. What is today? Today is October 13th, 2013. And we're going to continue with our study on the first paper, Section 3, God is a Universal Spirit. And that's on page 25.1 or paper 131. And for y'all that are listening at home, the slides that we have up on the wall are available at AtlantaUranchistudygroup.org or fifthepicalrevelation.com, and those addresses are at the end of these videos also. So you can download these videos. There's a viewer you can also download. So welcome, everyone. And we hope Pam and Rodney gets to a speedy recovery. So let's get started today. We've got a lot of material to cover. So God the Universal Spirit. Linda, would you like to start out today?
God is Spirit. He is a universal spiritual presence. The universal Father is an infinite spiritual reality. He is the sovereign, eternal, immortal, invisible, and only true God. Even though you are the offspring of God, you ought not to think that the Father is like yourselves in form and physique, because you are said to be created in His image, indwelt by mystery monitors dispatched from the central abode of His eternal presence. Spirit beings are real, notwithstanding they are invisible to human eyes, even though they have not flesh and blood.
Okay, so first it starts out telling us that God is Spirit. He is the Spirit, right? And He is the only one and true God. Not taking away from the Trinity, are we? But God is the original first source and center. And it goes on to say, you think of yourself as the offspring of God. But we still shouldn't think of ourselves like God, because He's not in physique or image like we are. And when they say we are created in His image, what are they talking about? They say mystery monitors here, which is what? The thought adjusters. So this being created in His image is because He has given us a what? A father fragment, a piece of Himself. So that makes us created in His image, doesn't it? Okay, and when we fuse with that adjuster, we become more and more like Him, and eventually we become spirit beings ourselves. And then they go on to say that that spirit beings are real, even though they're invisible to human eyes, and they do not have flesh and blood. Now, as we go on our journey to paradise, we become more and more closer and closer akin to spirit, even through the Morancha forms, don't we? So as we progress upward through the 570 Morancha changes we make to get to the spirit form, we get more and more towards that spirit form ourselves, don't we? So, and that's what they're talking about, being created in His image. And that is mentioned in the Old Testament, and this is what it was really talking about, us being created in His image. God is not like a person. He doesn't have arms and legs and all that stuff, right? He doesn't have body and flesh and just all the different things that we have. Okay?
So Roger, when they talk about, when it says that we're created in His image, does that mean the long journey of our creation beginning with our soul? And is that really what they're talking about?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. When we fuse with that adjuster and we actually become closer to being in His image as that progression goes on. Now in the physical form, we're probably what? The farthest away from His image, right? Mm-hmm. Even though we still have the adjuster. But being finite, Whose image are we more akin to? Jesus, right? And who else? The Supreme, right? That's our really finite concept of God, is the Supreme. So if you want to say we're created in anyone's image, the physical and the finite part of us would be created like the Supreme. But the soul of us, or the thought adjuster, is created like God the Father, right? Okay. Okay, let's keep going. Diane, would you take the next one?
So the seer of old, lo, he goes by me, and I see him not. He passes on also, but I perceive him not. We may constantly observe the works of God. We may be highly conscious of the material evidences of his majestic conduct, but rarely may we gaze upon the visible manifestation of his divinity, not even to behold the presence of his delegated spirit of human indwelling.
So he moves in mystery then, doesn't he? Okay, what he does is not evidence to us, right? We're not even conscious of his the material evidences of his majestic conduct. So these things we see as nature, is that God? No. Has nothing to do with God. It's natural law, isn't it? So we don't even see God in nature, in essence, is what they're saying here. All right. Gilles, would you take the next one?
Yeah. The universal Father is not invisible because he is hiding himself away from the lowly creatures of materialistic handicaps and limited spiritual endowments. The situation rather is, you cannot see my face, for no mortal can see me and live. No material man could behold the Spirit God and preserve his mortal existence. The glory and the spiritual brilliance of the divine personality presence is impossible of approach by the lower groups of spirit beings or by any order of material personalities. The spiritual luminosity of the Father's personal presence is a light which no mortal man can approach, which no material creature has seen or can see. But it is not necessary to see God with the eyes of the flesh in order to discern him by the faith vision of the spiritualized mind.
So the presence of God we can only discern in how? Spiritually, through the thought adjuster, right? Or the mystery monitor, right? And it says here that no material man could behold the glory of God and live. And why would that be? If you can imagine, it's pure light, pure energy. So the physical, yeah, that's exactly right. It's consumed, right? If you stood before God. Now, why do you think when you fuse with your thought adjuster, your body is consumed in a ball of fire? It's the same principle, isn't it? That same brilliance.
Getting rid of the outer.
Getting rid of the outer shell, the material body, getting rid of the material body and fusing with that indwelt Spirit of God, right? And when that happens, the change that comes over us is so drastic that our human body is no longer of use anymore, right? So it's consumed immediately. It's a brilliance. So if you think about it, if you want to stand before God, fuse with your adjuster. That's the closest you're going to get in the physical form, right? Because you're following the will of God, okay? And that's what it's talking about here. It says we have to discern him by faith vision in the spiritualized mind. You see that at the very end of it? The faith vision in the spiritualized mind is that discernment of God the Father through the adjuster, right? That's why we're faith sons of God in this body. We don't actually become real sons of God until we fuse with the adjuster in the mansion worlds. Okay? So that's why they call it faith sons of God. What am I going on? Okay, I know it's easy. Okay. Alright, so let's go on. Pam, would you take the next one?
Sure. The spirit nature of the universal Father is shared fully with his coexistent self, the eternal Son of Paradise. Both the Father and the Son, in like manner, share the universal and eternal Spirit fully and unreservedly with their conjoint personality coordinate, the infinite spirit. God's spirit is, in and of himself, absolute. In the Son, it is unqualified. In the Spirit, universal, and in and by all of them, infinite.
Okay, it brings us right back to the stuff from the forward, doesn't it? Right in the very first paper. Okay. First, it talks about the Father is shared fully by His co-existent self, Paradise Son. Remember, we talked about when the Father split Himself and created the eternal Son, He literally became two beings, didn't He? The Father and the Son, even though He retained His fatherhood, right? Co-existent self. Okay? Then the Father and the Son, in like manner, share the universal spirit, right, as the conjoint personality. So it's the creation of the universal Father and the eternal Son that the infinite Spirit came into being as a conjoint being, separate from each of them and yet part of all three. Okay? And then it goes on to tell us that just like the deity absolute, the universal absolute, and the qualified absolute, what's the pattern for them? It's right here. God is what? The deity absolute, right? He's the first absolute. The Son is the unqualified absolute, okay? Just like the unqualified absolute out in the super universes, okay? And the Spirit is the universal absolute, right? This is the pattern for everything, okay? And in and by all them, they become the infinite, right? Now, what brings in the finite? The supreme, right? That's the next stage, okay? So we got a good picture of this. Let me get this and get my little pointer. So here we have first the universal Father, right? First thought, first original absolute being, right? He splits himself and he has an expression of himself, right? The eternal Son. Okay, this is the expression. Second original absolute. See this here? All right. At the same time, what happens? Paradise appears, right? Okay. And from the universal Father, they take a part of themselves, and the original Son takes a part of himself. And what happens? They have the first action, which is the conjoint actor of the infinite Spirit, right? And this is the third original absolute. So we have a thought, an expression, and then an action. You see that? Mm-hmm. And when this third action came into being, what appeared?
Havona.
Havona, right? Following paradise. Okay? Let's go to the next one. And here's another picture of it. So we have the original Father, the original Son, the infinite Spirit, and what do we have behind it? Paradise, right? Then appears Havona, right? This is the post-Havona epic, which is the 7 super universes, right? But all these existential deities, all this happens pretty much simultaneously or at the same time. Okay? All right. Linda, would you take the next one?
God is a universal spirit. God is the universal person. The supreme personal reality of the finite creation is spirit. The ultimate reality of the personal cosmos is absonite spirit. Only the levels of infinity are absolute, and only on such levels is there finality of oneness between matter, mind, and spirit. Okay.
So you think God is the universal spirit and what? The universal person, right? Personality. Okay? He is really the only absonite beginning person, absonite spirit, right? All right. And it's only through God we have this levels of infinity they're talking about here, right? Which is what? mind, matter, and spirit. Now what is, or matter, mind, and spirit? Who is in charge of the spirit here? The eternal Son, right? Remember, he's the spirit circuit? Okay. Who's in charge of the mind? The infinite spirit. And what? Matter, right? He controls the gravity circuits too. Now who also helps with this matter part of it? The Supreme, right? Because the Supreme is the God of the finite, right? Okay. Diane, would you take the next one?
In the universe as God the Father is, in potential, the over-controller of matter, mind, and spirit. Only by means of his far-flung personality circuit does God deal directly with the personalities of his vast creation of willed creatures. But he is contactable outside of paradise only in the presences of his fragmented entities, the will of God abroad in the universes. This paradise spirit that indwells the minds of the mortals of time, and there fosters the evolution of the immortal soul of the surviving creatures, is of the nature and divinity of the universal Father. But the minds of such evolutionary creatures originate in the local universes and must gain divine perfection by achieving those experiential transformations of spiritual attainment, which are the inevitable result of a creature's choosing to do the will of the Father in heaven.
Okay, so we got God as the over-controller. How's he the over-controller? He over-controls the mind, matter, and spirit through whom? The eternal Son and the infinite Spirit, right? Okay, so he's the over-controller of everything. Okay? And he is contactable outside of paradise. How's he contacted outside of paradise? Through the thought adjustment, right? Okay? Through the will of his creatures, right? They say through the fragmented entities, the will of God abroad in the universes. So these Father fragments, in essence, inside you are literally the will of God, right? Okay? This paradise spirit that indwells the minds of mortal. In other words, this spirit circuit, right, that comes through the Son, right, is of paradise. So you have a little bit of paradise within you, don't you, through the Father, in essence. But the minds, that which gives us our thinking capability, is a local universe phenomenon. See that? How's it a local universe phenomenon? The mind circuits created through is taken up by who? The infinite Spirit, right? But who does the creative Mother Spirit, the local creative Mother Spirit, the partner of Jesus or Michael, get the circuitry to give us a mind? Through the infinite Spirit. The circuit comes through the infinite Spirit, through the creative Mother Spirit. She gives us what? Our local physical mind. Right? Okay, and that's what they're talking about here. It says it originates in the local universe and must gain divine perfection by achieving those, what? Experiential transformations. And how do we do that? Through the Supreme. Okay? A spirit of attainment. And inevitably result in the choosing of the Father's will in heaven. So, if you follow the normal course of what's supposed to happen, what will automatically happen? You will eventually do the Father's will, won't you? You can't go on without that, right? So this is how we follow the Father's will. Okay. The inner experience.
I don't know if I may ask a question, or
sure, go
I'm
right
not sure
ahead.
if it's a question, but something that the second sentence that I ponder a little bit, where when they are talking about the personality circuit, they are referring to God deals directly with the personalities this way.
That's right. That's right.
When they are talking about the thought adjuster, they are talking about contactable. So it looks like we may contact God through the thought adjuster.
That's right.
But the personality circuit is not expressed, at least in this paragraph, in terms of contact. It's expressed in terms of deal directly with. So I just I can't help ponder what it really means.
Well, think of it this way, Jill. The personality circuit is a gift from God, in essence. It's our essence of our beginning point, right? The difference between that and the thought adjuster is the personality circuit comes from God, but it's His gift to us so that He can put a personality back into His what? His other gift, the thought adjuster. The thought adjuster can't become a sanctioned being on its own without what? Personality. Okay? And the only way that it can get personality is through us, or what? To become personalized. Now, who do we know as a thought adjuster that became personalized? Jesus' thought adjuster, right? It was given a gift of personality, just like we are given a gift of personality. So it's a different part, it's a different gift from God, but it's not actually a fragment of God. That's the difference between the thought adjuster and our personality, right? Now, let's go one step further. If you refuse to survive, if you do not go past this world, if you don't have enough faith to make it to the first mansion world, what happens to that personality? It gets taken away from you, doesn't it? We talked about this in the Divine Executioners last week, right? It gets removed from you and it becomes part of the Supreme. So that expression of personality never has a vehicle to make the exact same expression again, because it goes into God the Supreme, right? So it can be given to you, but it can be taken away, right? Because it's a gift doesn't mean it's permanent until when? You fuse with that adjuster. And when you fuse with that adjuster, on record there's never been a being that fused with an adjuster that defaulted, right? Okay? There's many of the different beings that do. Alright. Oh, I almost skipped over that. You just read. You did. Jill, would you take the next one?
Sure. In the inner experience of man, mind is joined to matter. Such material-linked minds cannot survive mortal death. The technique of survival is embraced in those adjustments of the human will and those transformations in the mortal mind whereby such a God-conscious intellect gradually becomes spirit-taught and eventually spirit-led. This evolution of the human mind from matter association to spirit union results in the transmutation of the potential spirit phases of the mortal mind into the Morontia realities of the universal soul. Mortal mind, subservient to matter, is destined to become increasingly material and consequently to suffer eventual personality extinction. Mind yielded to spirit is destined to become increasingly spiritual and ultimately to achieve oneness with the surviving and guiding divine spirit, and in this way to attain survival and eternity of personality existence.
Okay, and that's what we just talked about, wasn't it? Okay, so mind, material mind, doesn't survive mortal death, does it? Okay, what is that part of mind that survives mortal death? It's the Morontia soul, right? That part that turns into the Morontia soul. Okay, so that all of our smarts and all of our transformations and all this starts to build up what they call Morontia Moda, okay, which is our mind of the Morontia form, right? Okay, and it goes on to say that this association to spirit results in the transmutation of the potentially spirit phases of the mortal mind to Morontia realities of the immortal soul. So what does that mean? That means the closer we become akin to the spirit realities, the closer we get to what? Our Morontia soul. And the closer we get to that transformation from the physical to the Morontia, to the more permanent. Okay? Now, it goes on to say something else that's rather interesting, and that is when mortal mind becomes subservient to matter, it becomes more and more material and what? Eventually ceases to exist. So if your whole life is only about the physical, if you never consider the spiritual, what's going to happen? You're going to go through your entire life, and at the end, what do you end up with? Non-existence, right? Extinction.
Waste of a life.
A waste of a life. That's exactly right. And that's when your guardian angel and the thought adjuster stands before the Ancients of Days and says there's nothing salvageable about the soul, right? Okay, that's extinction. Okay, and then it goes on to say that to achieve oneness with the Spirit, right, this divine part of God that's given to us, okay, we have to be guided by the divine Spirit, right? Okay, and this way we attain survival and the eternity of personality existence. That's the only way we do this, isn't it? So let me go on one more step. If we make it to the mansion worlds, and we haven't fused with our adjusters, which most of us won't before we get to the mansion worlds, is it still the most important item that we have to look forward to when we get to the Morontia worlds? Yes, because that's our first stage towards spirituality. Right? Okay. All right. Let me hit this one more time. Is this my one? I guess it's not. All right. We just read. Pam, would you take the next one?
Okay. I come forth from the eternal, and I have repeatedly returned to the presence of the universal Father. I know of the actuality and personality of the first source and center, the eternal and universal Father. I know that while the great God is absolute, eternal, and infinite, He is also good, divine, and gracious. I know the truth of the great declarations, God is spirit and God is love, and these two attributes are both completely revealed to the universe in the eternal Son. Who is the I referring to?
This is somebody tell us.
Divine Counselor.
Divine Counselor from we talked about last week. Pam,
Okay.
you missed last week, but we talked about the Divine Counselor. A Divine Counselor is a paradise being. He lives on paradise. And it says at the end of this paper it talks about him, but we went through a bunch of stuff last week about him. But this Divine Counselor is the highest known source of information of God the Father and all the universes. Okay? And it's this Divine Counselor that wrote the first of the 9 pages of the Urantia book. Okay? So that's why he says, I know of the actuality and the personality of the first source and center, because he stood before him many times. Okay? So this is like the ultimate word. What he says is. That's just all there is to it. And that's who this I is, the Divine Counselor. Okay? Let me see if there's anything else in this paragraph I want to think. And he goes on to say, he knows of the truth of the declaration that God is spirit and God is love, and these are revealed in the eternal Son. Now, why would he say it was revealed in the eternal Son? Because the eternal Son is what? The first expression of love, right? The creation of his own Son. All right, so that is basically showing the universe his action towards his first action of love. All right? Linda, you want to take the next one?
Number 4, the mystery of God. The infinity of the perfection of God is such that it eternally constitutes him mystery. And the greatest of all the unfathomable mysteries of God is the phenomenon of the divine indwelling of mortal minds. The manner in which the universal Father sojourns with the creatures of time is the most profound of all universe mysteries. The divine presence in the mind of man is the mystery of mysteries.
So they can't even explain how this fragment of God lives within you, can they? Even the Divine Counselor, it's a mystery to him. Right? No wonder we have such a hard time understanding all this. Okay. Naomi, we'll take the next one.
The physical bodies of mortals are the temples of God. Notwithstanding that the sovereign Creator sons come near the creatures of their inhabited worlds and draw all men to themselves, though they stand at the door of consciousness and knock, and delight to come in to all who will open the doors of their hearts. Although there does exist this intimate personal communion between the Creator's sons and their mortal creatures, nevertheless mortal men have something from God himself, which actually dwells within them. Their bodies are the temples thereof.
Okay. Remember this quote from the New Testament?
I stand at the door and knock.
I stand at the door and knock.
From Revelation.
Yep. This is what they're talking about, isn't it? Okay. The mortals, the bodies are the temples of God. So your body is the dwelling place of God, is it not? In the thought adjuster. Now, when they're talking about standing up at the door and knock, they're talking about the Creator sons here, aren't they? They're talking about Jesus knocking at the door, right? And how does he do this? He does through the Spirit of truth, does he not? So really we have two knocks at our heart, don't we? We have the knock of the Creator Son, and we have what else? The knock of the Holy Spirit. And what else?
Father.
The Father, the thought adjuster, right? So we really have the knock of the Father, the knock of the Son, and the influence of the Holy Spirit, right? So we have all these influences if we'll just let them take over in our lives, right? And that is the tricky part, is allowing men, or for men to allow this to happen, right?
They would teach us in church, you know, if you keep ignoring that knock, it's going to get fainter and fainter and fainter.
That's right.
If you keep refusing to hear it and open the door.
That's right. That's right. Right. Okay, Jill, would you take the next one?
When you are through down here, when your course has been run in temporary form on earth, when your trial trip in the flesh is finished, when the dust that composes the mortal tabernacle returns to the earth whence it came, then it is revealed the indwelling spirit shall return to God who gave it. There sojourns within each mortal being on this planet a fragment of God, a part and parcel of divinity. It is not yet yours by right of possession, but it is designedly intended to be one with you if you survive the mortal existence.
Okay, so once we finish down here, do all of our work and all that, and we start to ascend, right, to go on that long journey to paradise, right? Okay. When all this happens, this Spirit of God, thought adjuster, automatically wants to do what? It wants to return to God, the Father, right? So the pathway of the adjuster becomes your pathway, right? And how do we get to God? We hop on to that pathway with the adjuster. By fusing with the adjuster carries us all the way back to paradise. And that's what this is all about, isn't it? Right? That fragment of God, that parcel of divinity they're talking about in this paragraph. And it says here, it is not yet yours by right of possession, but it is intended to be one with you if you survive the mortal existence. Now what happens if you don't survive? That fragment goes back and is reused in someone else, isn't it? Right? Okay? And that's what this paragraph is all about. Interesting picture. Yeah.
I wonder why they don't tell us more about people who fused when they were here, like Elijah. Why don't they talk more about him?
I don't know, because they say when we get closer and closer to light and life, it happens more and more frequently.
Right.
And which is interesting because we don't have a record of only 2 people fusing, right? So we must be still far, far away from light and life. You know, when people talk about us quivering on the spiritual awakening, that may be part of that, but we're still living in barbarianism is the problem. and we've embraced this type of life.
Elijah was here 3,000 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. Look at the amount of time. Time has no meaning, does it? I mean, look at it. So, you know, it makes you think as a society, we have a lot of lessons to learn, don't we, to get in the right direction. We really do. And I think taking God out of everything is not a good direction to go, is it? It really isn't. Okay.
But perhaps a few others are fused between Elijah's time and now, but
We don't know
simply
about
not on record.
That's right. We don't know about it, do we, Jill? You
But
know?
I can agree more with your statement that for sure it's not a very common things happening. For sure, I think it's a fair statement.
Yeah.
And as a result, for sure, we can say that we are pretty far away from light and life.
Yeah, we are.
So there was actually a good quote from that I received like on a daily basis from the foundation that basically says that when the youth is not interested in religion and sociology, I'm sorry, what?
And ethics.
Yeah, ethics and all those things, that's the society is in danger.
Yeah.
And my personal experience, particularly when I was myself a teenager, is that I found it very difficult to engage on those topics with other fellows. I felt like there was a big disinterest in my times and days and place on those topics. And if you look at what's going on in our society, from the government down to business, it's not pretty. So there's
No.
a lot of
Secular.
corruption and so we are far away from it. I think
Yeah.
that's a fair
It's
statement.
not a pretty picture, is it?
Yeah, it's
And-
not a pretty picture at all.
You know, when you think about people in their youth, the most things most important to them is what? Relationships with their friends, girlfriends and boyfriends, music, things of the world, right? That's the highest interest among
Games, sports.
sports. Yeah, sports is a big one. It's kind of taken the place of any kind of social interaction like church used to be, you know, that sort of thing. So it seems like we're traveling down a road in the wrong direction. I don't know, but it is very secular. I can tell you that. That's all I have to say about that. But I agree with you, Jill. It's tough to get young people even interested in it because there's not what? There's not that physical, mental benefit, immediate benefit and satisfaction they have with being what? More barbaric, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot more fun to chase girls, right? Or for girls to
I
chase
wouldn't know.
boys.
No, just kidding.
It's a lot more fun to dance and listen to music and have fun and all that stuff. A lot less serious than sitting and talking about God the Father or what's going on spiritually in your life and stuff. And it makes you wonder if that's not part of the problem with these high numbers of suicide among youth because they don't have what? They don't have that center. They don't have a base. And you have to have that base and center to interpret what's going on out in the material world, right? Because if you don't have that center, what do you have? Immorality, right? You do anything you want to. You have no moral base. You know, it's through religion we develop that moral base, right?
It's true to be good. It was we really were persecuted when you were a teenager.
That's right.
You
You were.
got a prayerful life.
And that's still the case, isn't it? You know, it is. Okay. They think it's a lot more fun to be hedonistic, let me put it that way. Okay. Was that Jill just read?
Wow.
Pam, would you take the next paragraph, please?
We are constantly confronted with this mystery of God. We are nonplussed by the increasing unfolding of the endless panorama of the truth of His infinite goodness, endless mercy, matchless wisdom, and superb character.
Now, what's the problem with this paragraph? And that is, we do not discern these things, do we? This panorama of truth of infinite goodness, endless mercy, matchless wisdom and superb character. Why don't we discern these things? Because we're too busy in our secular world to discern them, aren't we? That's the problem. Okay. All right. Linda, would you take the next one?
The divine mystery consists in the inherent difference which exists between the finite and the infinite, the temporal and the eternal, the time-space creature and the universal creator, the material and the spiritual, the imperfection of man and the perfection of paradise deity. The God of universal love unfailingly manifests himself to every one of his creatures up to the fullness of that creature's capacity to spiritually grasp the qualities of divine truth, beauty, and goodness.
Now here's the answer to the question I just asked, right? Why don't we see it?
Capacity.
It's the capacity, right? The divine. What is it? How does it say it here?
Creature's capacity.
Creature's capacity.
The fullness. Of
The fullness of the creature's capacity to be able to discern it yourselves, right? You can, if you can discern the material and the spiritual and the divine goodness of God the Father, He will reveal it to you, right? But there has to be that willingness to discern it, right? That's where the rub comes in, isn't it?
It makes me think about the Alphaeus twins, and one of when Jesus was teaching, it says that they were blissfully ignorant.
Blissfully ignorant, that's right.
But then it goes on to say how much they loved Jesus. So even though they didn't understand everything, they loved him. So
Yeah. Diane, you want to take the next one?
To every spirit being and to every mortal creature, in every sphere and in every world of the universe of universes, the universal Father reveals all of us his gracious and divine self that can be discerned or comprehended by such spirit beings and by such mortal creatures. God is no respecter of persons, either spiritual or material. The divine presence which any child of the universe enjoys at any given moment is limited only by the capacity of such a creature to receive and to discern the spirit actualities of the supermaterial world.
So our discernment depends on what? Us. What we're capable of comprehending, right? So when people run around and say, I don't understand God and I don't see God in my life, why is that? Because they have not allowed God in their life, right? They've not allowed the thought adjuster to speak to them in
those
this
who
world.
have more will be given.
To those that have, more will be given. That's exactly right. So if you open up to God and you let Him speak to you, He's going to speak to you more and more and more, right? It only depends on your capacity to receive, right? Okay. Jill, would you take the next one?
As the reality in human spiritual existence, God is not a mystery. But when an attempt is made to make plain the realities of the spirit world to the physical minds of the material order, mystery appears. Mystery is so subtle and so profound that only the faith grasp of the God-knowing mortal can achieve the philosophic miracle of the recognition of the infinite by the finite, the discernment of the eternal God by the evolving mortals of the material worlds of time and space.
Okay, so as a physical mind, a material order, the mystery is that it takes that faith grasp of God. You see that God-knowing mortals, that faith grasp. So it's through faith that we become believers, isn't it? It's through faith that we are saved from this life, right? That's why they call us faith sons of God. It's the seeing, it's the believing without seeing. We can't see God, can we? We can't see God in the universe. We can't see God in the physical world. But what we can have is faith that He's working in our lives, can we? So, that being the case, can you prove God to someone, anyone? You can't prove God to anyone, can you? Because it's a faith thing. It's a faith belief, right? And you have to have it from within. Okay? So that's why we're faith sons of God. Okay? Let's keep let me move this down just a tiny. Pam, would you take the next first section? Personality of the universal Father?
Do not permit the magnitude of God, his infinity, either to obscure or eclipse his personality. He who planned the ear, shall he not hear? He who formed the eye, shall he not see? The universal Father is the acme of divine personality. He is the origin and destiny of personality throughout all creation. God is both infinite and personal. He is an infinite personality. The Father is truly a personality, notwithstanding that the infinity of his person places him forever beyond the full comprehension of material and finite beings.
Okay, so we cannot think of God as not being a personal being, can we? He's not just this force out there. He's not just this over-controller, but he's an actual person also, right? Okay, and that's what they're talking about here, the personality of God.
How could we know him if he didn't have a personality?
That's exactly right. We couldn't know him if he did not have a
That was
personality.
Rodin's struggle.
Yep, I hate to say this, but I think my computer froze up on me again. This one likes to do this. It's just, you know. Y'all bear with me for 1 second. Let me reset this here real quick. We might get lucky when it comes back on. We'll see here. Just lost my little thing there. Will it come back on? Come on. It doesn't look like it's going to. Nope, we lost that one. It would kill us, so we'll just go by the other one for a minute. If I can reach it.
And you're tall.
Okay, we'll just go from the same line. All right. Now I lost who was up next. You?
Yeah, Pam just read.
Okay.
God is much more than a personality, as personality is understood by the human mind. He is even far more than any possible concept of a superpersonality. But it is utterly futile to discuss such incomprehensible concepts of divine personality with the minds of material creatures whose maximum concept of the reality of being consists in the idea and ideal of personality. The material creature's highest possible concept of the universal Father is embraced within the spiritual ideals of the exalted idea of divine personality. Therefore, although you may know God, you may know that God must be much more than the human conception of personality. You equally well know that the universal Father cannot possibly be anything less than an eternal, infinite, true, good, and beautiful personality.
Okay, so he is above all of our concepts of personality, right? He is the epitome of personality. Let me see if I can get both of these to come back on. I got something in this one. I think they're both coming back up. Y'all bear with me for 1 second here. We might get lucky and they both come back over here. So he is the personality, the ultimate of personality, right? No, I lost both of them. I don't believe it. Huh?
It's not a good one.
No. Y'all bear with me for a second. Here we go. Y'all bear with me 1 second. I'm going to do this.
Here it is.
Here we go. We got one back. Let's see if we get the other one back now. Well, it's there. It's just not coming through. Well, sorry, y'all. These things happen. All right, that's good. All right, let's keep it. Ann, you want to take the next one here?
God is not hiding from any of his creatures. He is unapproachable to so many orders of beings only because he dwells in a light which no material creature can approach. The immensity and grandeur of the divine personality is beyond the grasp of the unperfected mind of evolutionary mortals. He measures the water in the hollow of his hand, measures the universe with the span of his hand. It is he who sits on the circle of the earth, who stretches out the heavens as a curtain and spreads them out as a universe to dwell in. Lift up your eyes on high and behold who has created all these things, who brings out their worlds by numbers and calls them all by their names. And so it is true that the invisible things of God are partially understood by the things which are made. Today, and as you are, you must discern the invisible Maker through his manifold and diverse creation, as well as through the revelation and ministration of his sons and their numerous subordinates.
Okay, it's through the revelation of his son and their subordinates. Their sons like whom? Michael, right? Jesus, right? It's through the revelation of him we actually see God the Father in action, don't we? Okay, so this is his evidence of what's going on in the universe. Now, he's also, it goes in the beginning of this paragraph, it talks about how immense he is. You know, he measures the universes in the span of his hand, you know. That's a super universe, you know, it's pretty big. So to God, this is all part of his infinite being, isn't it? Okay. Jill, would you take the next one?
Even though material mortals cannot see the person of God, they should rejoice in the assurance that he is a person. By faith, accept the truth which portrays that the universal Father so loved the world as to provide for the eternal spiritual progression of his lowly inhabitants, that he delights in his children. God is lacking in none of those superhuman and divine attributes which constitute a perfect, eternal, loving, and infinite creator personality.
Okay, so to us, he is the epitome of the Father, isn't he? Right? Okay? And he lacks in none of the superhuman plus what? The human attributes, right? Where do you think the human attributes come from? They come from the superhuman, right? So all these things like the eternal love, infinite creator personalities and things like that of the sons, that all comes from the Father, right?
Love and mercy.
Love and mercy, that's right. Concern, right? Okay. Pam, would you take the next one?
Yeah. In the local creations, excepting the personnel of the super universes, God has no personal or residential manifestation aside from the paradise creator sons, who are the fathers of the inhabited worlds and the sovereigns of the local universes. If the faith of the creatures were perfect, he would assuredly know that when he had seen a creator son, he had seen the universal Father. In seeking for the Father, he would not ask nor expect to see other than the Son. Mortal man simply cannot see God until he achieves completed spirit transformation and actually attains paradise.
Okay, so I'm getting feedback there. Our concept, mute for me for a minute, Pam. I'm getting feedback from you.
Me?
Yeah, just for a second.
Turn my volume down?
No, we're getting feedback. I can hear myself talking. That's good right there. It's perfect. Okay. So, apart from paradise, the creator sons are the fathers of the inhabited worlds. Do you see that? Our concept of the father of our universe is really Jesus, right? That's what it is. Our concept of God has always been Jesus, the God we have a concept of. But the universal Father is even greater than that, isn't he? We don't even have concepts that we can comprehend the greatness of God the Father. Okay? But that's okay, is because he sent these sons down to the local universes to be there in what? In his stead. Jesus is the extension of the divinity of God the Father. Do you see that? The divinity line comes from God the Father. And we see it in through Jesus. Okay? And then it goes on to say, in seeking for the Father, if we really understood it properly, once we saw the Son, we wouldn't expect not to see anything but the Son, would he? Because he's the epitome of God the Father. All right? So if you've seen the Father, you've seen the Son. You remember when Jesus talks, in the later in the book and even in the New Testament, those who have seen the Father have seen the Son, have seen the Father. That's what he's talking about. He is the divinity. He is your creator as far as God is concerned. And we can't stand before God the Father until we complete the spirit transformation and we actually attain paradise. So even if we could stand in the midst of paradise right before God right now, would we recognize him? No. Because what? We don't have spirit vision. And we don't have spirit capabilities yet. And those things are experientially attained through time, right? As we go up the spiritual ladder. And so we have to earn these things. All right? Natures of Linda? Yeah.
The natures of the Paradise Creator Sons do not encompass all the unqualified potentials of the universal absoluteness of the infinite nature of the first great source and center, but the universal Father is in every way divinely present in the Creator Sons. The Father and his sons are one. These Paradise Sons, on the order of Michael, are perfect personalities, even the pattern for all the local universe personality, from that of the bright and morning star down to the lowest human creature of progressing animal evolution.
Okay. So the sons of God, basically, right, represent the Father in every way, don't they? And that includes what? The creative sons of Michael, right? The sons that Michael created. The bright morning star, the evening star, Gabriel. Do you think that includes the Melchizedeks? Of course it does, right? The Verondadeks, the Lonandeks, right? All the way down to the life carriers, right? These are all representative of what? Divinity, right? Deity. So these are all here to help us understand our own evolution back to God, right? Okay.
Without God and except for his great and central person, there will be no personality throughout all the vast universe of universes. God is personality.
Okay, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Let's keep going. Okay. Gilles, would you take the next one?
Notwithstanding that God is an eternal power, a majestic presence, a transcendent ideal, and a glorious spirit, though he is all these and infinitely more, nonetheless he is truly and everlastingly a perfect creator personality, a person who can know and be known, who can love and be loved, and one who can befriend us, while you can be known as other humans have been known as a friend of God. He is a real spirit and a spiritual reality.
Okay, so through the thought adjuster, we can know God as a person, can't we? Right? through that inner presence. All right, Pam, would you take the next one?
As we see the universal Father revealed throughout his universe, as we discern him indwelling his myriads of creatures, as we behold him in the persons of his sovereign sons, as we continue to sense his divine presence here and there, near and afar, let us not doubt nor question his personality primacy. Notwithstanding all these far-flung distributions, he remains a true person and everlastingly maintains personal connection with the countless hosts of his creatures scattered throughout the universe of universes.
So, what's interesting about this paragraph, they talk about us seeing God the Father through the sovereign sons. But let's take that one step further. We also see God the Father through whom? The thought adjuster dwelling in each and every one of us, don't we? We can sense the presence of God through every person you meet and every person you interact with. Okay? So that Father fragment is there, and if you're discerning enough, you can actually discern God in each and every being. And it says here, he is a triune person, everlasting, maintains personal connection with the countless host of creatures scattered throughout the universes of time. And how does he do that? He does that through his own fragments, doesn't he? Right? Constantly.
As we see the universal Father revealed throughout his universe, as we discern him indwelling his myriads of creatures, as we behold him in the persons of his sovereign...
We just read that here. Go to the next one.
The idea of the personality of the universal Father is an enlarged and truer concept of God, which has come to mankind chiefly through revelation. Reason, wisdom, and religious experience all infer and imply the personality of God, but they do not altogether validate it. Even the indwelling thought adjuster is pre-personal. The truth and maturity of any religion is directly proportional to its concept of the infinite personality of God and to its grasp of the absolute unity of deity. The idea of a personal deity becomes then the measure of religious maturity after religion has first formulated the concept of the unity of God.
Okay, so it's God's unity being throughout the universe, right? That makes the difference, and that's what makes the difference in a religion, and determines our religious maturity. Do you see that? Okay, and that becomes the measure, is the idea of our personal deity, right? And understanding the unity of God throughout all the universe and all religions, isn't it? Okay. Diana?
Primitive religion had many personal gods, and they were fashioned in the image of man. Revelation affirms the validity of the personality concept of God, which is merely possible in the scientific postulate of a first cause, and is only provincially suggested in the philosophic idea of universal unity. Only by personality approach can any person begin to comprehend the unity of God. To deny the personality of the first source and center leaves one only the choice of two philosophical dilemmas, materialism or pantheism.
And that's really what we live in today, isn't it? Materialism, right? What is pantheism? Pantheism is the concept that God is everything, right? The tree, the sofa, everything, right? And without the personality, they're saying here, of God, then that becomes a valid concept, doesn't it? And it's not valid. All right. Jill, would you take the next one?
In the contemplation of deity, the concept of personality must be divested of the idea of corporeality. The material body is not indispensable to personality in either man or God. The corporeality error is shown in both extremes of human philosophy. In materialism, since man loses his body at death, he ceases to exist as a personality. In pantheism, since God has no body, he is not, therefore, a person. a person. The superhuman type of progressing personality functions in a union of mind and spirit.
Okay, so what is this idea of corporality? And they say that the contemplation of deity, we must be divested of this idea of corporality. In other words, what? We think if you do not have a body, you do not exist, right? That's what they're talking about here. Corporality, okay? And then they go on to say that a body is not indispensable to either to personality, either God or man. So we don't need our bodies either, do we? What happens? When we go into the dimension worlds, we're given new bodies, aren't we? So this is just a vessel to go from one existence to another. And if you think about it that way, is it so important the time you die or that death comes at all? Not in reality, because you continue on. You don't change. When you leave this existence, you go on to the next existence. This is just a change. That's all there is to it. Okay, and then they go on to say something that's really interesting, because this is an argument that Rodin of Alexandria brought up. Okay, and that is the concept of pantheism. Since God has no body, he is not therefore a person, right? Rodin made this error when he first came in, and the apostles had to convince him otherwise, didn't they? Right? And the other thing that Rodin made an error about is he said that God did not have a personality because he did not have an equal. Remember that? And then what did the apostles say? Brought up the fact that, well, he had an equal in the eternal Son and the infinite Spirit. So that means he had a communication, somebody to communicate with. So therefore, he must be able to have a personality. Remember that? Okay, and that's from Rodin of Alexandria, if you want to look at it, the book. That's an interesting concept. But he is a person, right? Okay. Pam, would you take the next one?
Personality is not simply an attribute of God. It rather stands for the totality of the coordinated infinite nature and the unified divine will, which is exhibited in eternity and universality of perfect expression. Personality in the supreme sense is the reverence of God to the universe of universes.
The revelation of God to the universes of universes, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have anything to say about that. It's pretty much self-explanatory. All right.
God, being eternal, universal, absolute, and infinite, does not grow in knowledge nor increase in wisdom. God does not acquire experience, as finite man might conjecture or comprehend, but he does, within the realms of his own eternal personality, enjoy those continuous expansions of self-realization which are in certain ways comparable to and analogous with the acquirement of new experience by the finite creatures of the evolutionary worlds.
Now, who does he do this through?
Supreme.
The Supreme, right? God does not require experience, does he? Or he gain experience, but what does he gain? He gains the knowledge of the experience of his beings, doesn't he, through the Supreme Being, right? Okay, and we've talked about that before.
And he enjoys the continuous expansions of self-realization.
Self-realization, right? Within the existence of God, right? Okay.
The absolute perfection of the infinite God would cause him to suffer the awful limitations of unqualified finality and perfectness, were it not a fact that the Universal Father directly participates in the personality struggle of every imperfect soul in the wide universe who seeks, by divine aid, to ascend to the spiritually perfect worlds on high. This progressive experience of every spirit being and every mortal creature throughout the universe of universes is a part of the Father's ever-expanding deity consciousness of the never-ending divine circle of ceaseless self-realization.
Okay, so do you see why God the Father started all this creation in the first place? This is the paragraph that explains it, right here. If it wasn't for this, what he did, creating the sun and all the beings after that, he would suffer the awful limitations of the unqualified finality of perfectness. You see that? In other
He
words,
couldn't be with anybody. 'Cause
couldn't be with anybody. He would go through eternity alone and limited within his own infinity, right? This is his expression of love to his creatures through expressing himself, right? Okay. All right. Gio, would you take the next one?
It is literally true. In all your afflictions, he is afflicted. In all your triumphs, he triumphs in and with you. His personal divine spirit is a real part of it. The Isle of Paradise responds to all the physical metamorphosis of the universe of universes. The eternal Son includes all the spirit impulses of all creation. The conjunct actor encompasses all the mind expression of the expanding cosmos. The Universal Father realizes in the fullness of divine consciousness all the individual experience of the progressive struggles of the expanding minds and the ascending spirits of every entity, being, and personality of the whole evolutionary creation of time and space. And all this is literally true, for in him we all live and move and have our being.
Okay, so when people ask you, does God feel pain? What can you say? Definitely. With what? Within his children, right? So when we experience pain, the thought adjuster experienced the same sort of thing that we do, doesn't he? He's going through it with us. So, and it goes on to say that his pre-personal divine spirit is a real part of you, right? We're talking about the adjuster again, aren't they? Okay, we keep coming back to this over and over and over. And it says here that the paradise responds to the physical metamorphosis of the universe of universes, and the eternal Son includes all spirit impulses of all creation. So through the eternal Son, everything that has happened spiritually is relayed through the Son to where? To the Father, right? Now think about this. It goes on to say that the same thing happens with the conjoint actor, the infinite spirit of the mind, right? So God the Father experienced the personality part through each of us, the individual children, the spirit part through the eternal Son, and the mind part through the infinite spirit. So all these circuits that come back to paradise are directly affect the Father. See that? They all lead back to the Father. Okay? And it says here, the Father realizes in the fullness of the divine consciousness all the individual experience and progressive struggles of the expanding minds and the ascending spirits of every entity, being, and personality of the whole evolutionary creation of time and space. Now how does he do that? Through the Supreme. Okay? So all the experiences, through the circuits, through his own personality fragments, right, the thought adjusters, and through the experience of the Supreme. And then it goes on to say, it is literally true, for in him we all live, move, and have our being. So we can't exist outside the what? God the Father. Can we exist outside of God the Supreme? No. It's the same principle, isn't it? So that's why when you study Supreme, it says, in him we all live and have our being, right? It's the same principle as within God the Father, right? The experiential part. All right. And it is, I am going to stop here and take up from this point next week. Personality in the universe. Yeah, I sure am. All right. I have time for a prayer?
Yeah, I'll wait.
Let's have a real short prayer. Diane, would you say a prayer for us?
Heavenly Father God, we thank you so much for this opportunity to grow and learn your word and to find it manifesting in our lives, in our thoughts, and in our patterns, so that we may truly be your instruments of love and kindness and truth. We thank you for the influence of our spirit of truth and our thought adjusters for being individually with each of us. And we ask for special blessing for our loved ones, that they may become aware of their thought adjuster within them, and that all those we meet, we may be a witness to them. We just thank you for this day and this opportunity to be together and to share and to grow and to learn more about you and your plan. It is in the name of Jesus Christ, Michael, and Abaddon, that we pray and give thanks. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for joining us. Please come see us again. God bless.
I brought enough chicken pieces for everybody.